Okay, so this is something that came to my attention a couple of days ago concerning Nottinghamshire Police Force, who, let me get it out there right from the start, I am sure they've highlighted an issue, and it's a genuine issue that they're dealing with as far as I'm concerned. And as far as I'm concerned, they're acting with the best of intent. But I think they've got this horribly, horribly wrong. And I want to give you my concerns in this video. Before I do, let me give you a couple of examples to highlight where this is going to be going and to set my agenda out there. Imagine this scenario. Imagine that I am stood at the side of the road and there's a lesbian next to me, and a woman walks over, an attractive woman walks over the other side of the road, and I shout over the road, "Get your tits out, show us your tits." And the lesbian next to me shouts out, "Get your tits out, show us your tits." Okay? And imagine that woman reports both of us to Nottinghamshire Police Force. And Nottinghamshire Police Force categorise what I have done as a hate crime and investigate me, try and find out who is the perpetrator and challenge me for what I've done and see if they can prosecute me for having committed a hate crime. But the lesbian woman who stood next to me doing exactly the same thing, they're just really not interested in that. They don't regard that as a hate crime. They're not going to look at that. They're not going to look at challenging their behaviour. Now imagine another scenario. I'm walking through Nottinghamshire city centre now. Something I'd advise you to do. Lovely city, by the way, if you get a chance to visit. We're walking through Nottinghamshire city centre, and a group of men wolf whistle my wife. She contacts the police. Nottinghamshire Police, they're interested. They think a hate crime may have been committed there, and so they want to investigate. They want to note that down as a hate crime. They want to find out who were the perpetrators, and they want to challenge them on what they've done. See if there are grounds to prosecute as well. We carry on walking down the road. A group of women wolf whistle at me. I contact the police, and the police say, "Nothing, there's no hate crime being committed there, son. Man up and learn to deal with it." Trivialising, being a little bit flippant there, but something along those lines. They're not interested in, they do not regard it as a hate crime there. I would find that scenario a little bit concerning, but apparently that is the scenario that has taken place. This was the headline in The Guardian. Nottinghamshire Police to count wolf whistling in street as a hate crime. Force becomes first in the country to adopt a separate category for misogynistic incidents in attempt to tackle sexist abuse. Now, often when you read these articles in newspapers, whether it's The Guardian or the Mail or whatever, they put a slant on it and make it seem as if the legislation or the police campaign is only focusing in one direction. But when you read the small print in the campaign, you find actually it's going to apply in a much more symmetrical manner. This is what it says in the press release from Nottinghamshire Police. Okay, this is what they wrote. Nottinghamshire Police, in partnership with Nottingham Women's Centre, has become the first force in the country to recognise misogyny, which is hatred towards women, as a hate crime. Misogyny hate crime, that's what they're calling it. In addition to general hate crime definition, may be understood as incidents against women that are motivated by an attitude of a man towards a woman, and includes behaviour targeted towards a woman by men simply because they are a woman. Then it gives some examples. Examples of this may include unwanted or uninvited sexual advances, physical or verbal assault, unwanted or uninvited physical or verbal contact or engagement, use of mobile phones to send unwanted or uninvited messages or take photographs without consent or permission. Right, let me put this in a little bit of context. Backtracking now, this is a little bit sort of like a sort of Pulp Fiction. It's not quite in a chronological order here. We have this legislation in the United Kingdom for hate crimes and these protected characteristics such as religion, such as race, such as sexual orientation. And if you discriminate or abuse somebody on the grounds of these characteristics, it's regarded as a more serious offence. It is regarded as a hate crime. But here's the kicker, right? Even though the sexual orientation is really there to protect gay and lesbians, homosexual people, it applies equally to straight people, right? So if you did the same kind of thing to somebody purely because they're straight and not gay, then they would fall foul of the same hate crime legislation. Okay, with religion, it doesn't just specify Christianity and say you can't treat Christians and Muslims this way, but Hindus, we're not too bothered about Hindus, that's not really a problem. No, it specifies all religions and those who don't have a religion. So if you're being discriminated against or treated with in a distasteful manner and abused because you have a religion, then you would fall foul of it. Or if it's specifically because you don't have a religion, you would fall foul of it. It's beautifully symmetrical. And that is one of the progressive things that I've always lauded, and one of the advances that I've seen since I was a kid in the 70s and growing up in the 80s. There used to be so much legislation with regard to men and women that treated men and women differently, that treated husbands and wives differently in terms of retirement, national insurance, the way that tax was paid, a whole manner of things. And almost all of them, a few of them that relate to parenthood, haven't been equalised, but almost all of them have been equalised, and that is something that all of us applaud. Even though we know that some of these things tend to apply in reality more to men and women, we regard the fact that sometimes men could be on the receiving end or sometimes women could be on the receiving end as enough to make sure that we equalise the legislation. That is the kind of society that we live in today, folks. But that isn't the kind of society that Nottinghamshire Police deems that we live in here, because it seems that their approach is kind of harking back to a time where we regarded men as the perpetrators, men as the ne'er-do-wells who victimise women and women as the victims. So if there is a problem between a man and a woman, your preconception is that the man will be the aggressor and the woman will be the party who is being aggressed against. And that is the first problem that I have with this. When I talked about this on Twitter, some people had some problems that this kind of thing could be abused, and yeah, it can be, but the same thing would apply to any of the things, any of the protected characteristics that already come under the hate crime legislation. So let me be clear in this. I have no problem with Nottinghamshire Police including biological sex or gender in with all these protected characteristics in terms of things that they want to classify as hate crimes, in terms of things that they would want to act upon and follow up and investigate and behaviours they want to challenge. I have no problem with them including sex alongside all these other ones, but why the hell would you take this anachronistic perspective whereby men are regarded automatically as the perpetrators and women as the victims? So here are some of the problems that I have with this. First off, what does that say about the way that Nottinghamshire Police Force regard men and women? And although domestic violence isn't included in this, if I lived within their catchment area, I'd have a little bit of concern that perhaps they'd prejudge anything with regard to that, because it seems as if they have this pre-commitment that men are going to be the aggressors and women are going to be the victims. And the second thing is, it's just really depressing to me that it's undoing some of the good work that's been done. As I say, domestic violence isn't included in this. They're clear on that. But domestic violence is an example of something whereby I think a lot of positive steps have been taken in recent years. Partly in terms of highlighting the domestic violence that women are on the receiving end at, tackling men, and instructing men with regard to that, to be aware that other men are doing these things and to try and encourage men to alter their behaviour and show how societally unacceptable that is. But also in terms of realising that men can be victims. Anybody can be the victim of domestic violence. A man can be a victim of domestic violence. Lesbian relationships can include domestic violence. Gay male relationships can include domestic violence. Anybody can be the victim of domestic violence. And this seems to be unravelling all of that, because it's suggesting one of two things. That either men can't be victims, that only women can be victims of all these different things that they've listed, or men can be victims of these things, but it's kind of trivial. When women do these things, right? When women are wolf whistling or sexually making unwanted physical or sexual advances towards men, that it's just trivial, that it's just something to laugh off, that men should just man up and deal with these things, that it's not abusive when women do these things. And this is harking back to these old outdated attitudes that it's kind of okay for a woman to hit a man, or that men, if they suffer from domestic abuse, should just kind of man up. It's harking back into those attitudes, and I think that's really, really dangerous. And there's no way that I can read this that seems to portray Nottinghamshire Police Force in a positive light here. As I say, I am sure they are doing this with the best of intentions, but they must believe that one of these two scenarios are true. Either they've decided to take this approach because what they've said is, well, the vast majority of what's taking place here, women are on the receiving end of it, and men are not on the receiving end of it. But if that is the case, then what is the problem with including men? For those few men that are on the receiving end of it, if men make up such a small proportion of the victims with regard to this, then it's a trivial thing just to include men and make this a gender neutral campaign that you're embarking on here. Emphasize women with regard to the campaign, but don't just make it misogyny and misandry because of those cases when men are on the receiving end. Or their perspective is that, well, actually, yeah, significantly men are on the receiving end of these things as well as women, but we don't regard it as very serious. That when women do these things, that it's not really very serious. And, you know, when we're talking about outdated attitudes, what a patriarchal view of manhood that is, that men are both the aggressors, but also that if men are on the receiving end of it, they should just man up and deal with it. And also what a traditionally patriarchal view of women, both that women are necessarily the victims, and what a paternalistic attitude towards women that is, but also this idea that little women can't do any harm, and so when women do these things, it's just something to kind of laugh at. I can't see any merit whatsoever in the way that they framed this. I think including sex and trying to deal with sexist abuse, I see a lot of merit and I applaud them, but Jesus Christ, what a terrible way to frame their campaign. What an anti-male way. What an insensitive way to frame that campaign. Well, that's what I think about it. Very interested to know what you think. Leave a reply. Make a video. Let other people know. I've not seen many videos or anything about this, so make a video about it. Get the message out there, because I'm really interested to get some more people's perspectives on this. Okay, thank you for watching. Bye for now.